Hi, everybody. It's Ed Mann, the executive producer of The Real Brady Bros. We have more fun on this. You guys didn't even know the kind of fun we're having. Before the mic broke. we went through a whole discussion of whether or not one episode is remembered more than another, and if anyone remembers they were hurt in an episode and they weren't, and one was saved. And that's what we cover in these Q&As, because you know what? It's all about trying to remember and answering your questions, which you are so good to outline for us on the Real Brady Bros Facebook page, at Real Brady Bros. And you are welcome to do more. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Real Brady Bros right now. It's Barry Williams and Christopher Knight.
So we're told.
Oh, you know how
really
else we're known as the Real Brady Bros.
Brady.
Sometimes
the Real Brady Bros.
Sometimes in sync,
right,
too.
Never in sync, but always in person.
Well, this is interesting, Ed. You brought up an issue just before we got on recording here about an episode from one of our reunions that Chris and I both are having some difficulty figuring out, because it's not it's not the Brady Bunch. If we didn't watch the episodes before we did these things, we wouldn't remember anything. But this is from the Bradys, which was subsequent to A Very Brady Christmas, but before the movies, around 1990.
Correct. That's right. And James is the gentleman who asked this particular question what was it like filming the last The Bradys episode in 1990, The Party Girls, which is the name of the episode, when the ladies bought Sam's Butcher Shop. You said chop. It's Butcher Shop, James, but a minor error for their new catering service. And Greg and Peter have a disagreement or an argument, comes to blows. Was it a real fight? But you guys remember this completely differently from one another.
And if we can
we made love, not war.
Can we just set the stage on the Bradys for just a half a minute? This is was to be a series, even it started out as a couple of 2-hour movies, but that's a whole other story. But we're all grown up, and now we're supposed to have adult kinds of issues and things. And in this episode, Marcia decides to start a catering service and enrolls my wife on the show and Bobby's wife on the show to do that. So this is one of the first outings with the service.
This was the last episode, and the entire Brady's production was kind of convoluted. And I'm now using very faulty memory, but I recall that we were asked to do a series of 2-hour movies of the week, or like a long form show, like 3 2-hour movies. And that's how it was scripted, if I'm not mistaken. But the powers of the network decided to put it on as 6 different episodes or 5 different episodes. They broke it apart.
Before or after we filmed
episodes? After we filmed them. So we filmed them as a 2-hour arc that then was broken into an hour, if I recall correctly. And clearly, though this is something we did more recently than the Brady Bunch episodes, I'm having more difficulty remembering any part of this. Matter of fact, I don't remember the argument at all, whatever the argument was about.
Well, I think you were choking.
But that wouldn't have been the reason. But obviously, that's the reason for the reconciliation. You apparently saved my life. But I have recalled in my mind, I was giving you mouth to mouth because it was you choking, but I guess that's not the case. I guess it was me choking. And it's interesting how we remember things.
Yes.
And why it is we remember them as we do when they're so clearly maybe not the case. I'm reading off of IMDb the synopsis of this episode, which seems new to me. Mm-hmm. And it says, to support their family, Wally and Marcia decide to open their own catering business called The Party Girls, thus the name of the episode. And invite Nora, this is Greg's wife, and Tracy, Bobby's wife, to be their partners. Meanwhile, Greg and Peter begin feuding when their schedules keep conflicting. Over what? I have no idea. Their differences are resolved only when Peter chokes on some food at one of the Party Girls' first events. Greg uses CPR to save Peter's life. Now, Greg was a doctor, so that makes sense that you would have used CPR. But why is it that I seem to have recalled that I was the one giving you the Heimlich maneuver when clearly this has got to be right, and I'm completely wrong.
Well, I think it's important sometimes for you to be the hero of your own stories and memory.
I'm different than you?
Well, I am the one who saved you.
and somehow the Chris Knight Lord is frustratingly avoiding that reality and wanting to think that in fact Peter saved Greg. Maybe that's a subconscious.
I got the number of a great shrink.
Number of people out there,
that...
you realize this is what's so difficult about even doing this podcast. We have to watch the episodes to even know what they're about.
That's right.
Well, in any event, I ended up clearing your throat and giving you mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Wasn't romantic, that's for sure. But I tell you what I did appreciate is that you were trusting that I wouldn't be stupid, which you've since given up on. And so when I was doing that, and I was putting air into your mouth, your chest was actually inflated, going up and down, and it was a very nice exchange.
Yeah.
Let me just say that.
I'm glad it worked for you. It was the method.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Well, everyone's a hero, I guess, is the moral of that story. Right.
We'll have to put this in the rotation. We'll eventually have to find these.
We should find these.
Whether 5 or 6 episodes, episode 5, so that we find these episodes. I am sure we can. I'm sure that
there must be a way. Yeah.
CBS Paramount has them somewhere.
Yep.
And then we'll have to do a podcast on each and every one of them.
Oh, don't be groaning over there.
These are an hour long, before you commit.
But you're the hero of the story, so you got to look at it that way. All right, Edward asks the following question here, and this seems to be directed about a particular episode, to Barry particularly. Always thought the pylon and egg driving test was unfair. How can you even see it when you're pulling up to it?
Well, that's exactly the point. It's not only unfair, it's ridiculously difficult to actually accept the idea that Marcia Brady is going to beat Greg in a don't knock the egg off the pylon driving contest without making it just ridiculously lottery-like luck. Either somebody was coaching her or it was the director. But I got to the end there. The script called for it, so I stepped on the gas instead of the brake. That's how I have to take grief for that.
You could have looked off to your right, since Peter and Bobby were standing there. They could have given you, sort of a clue. You could have looked at their eyes, but you didn't. You didn't even.
Were you cueing me, and I just missed it? Is that what you're saying? Because you were there.
This was all boys versus girls.
Yeah, it was. But I didn't see any clue. I didn't see any stop here, Greg, or
You didn't look for it. It had to be done surreptitiously.
Were you doing it?
No.
You know why?
My eyes getting wider and wider as you're getting closer.
He is the hero of his stories.
You just blew it for all of us.
We have a recurring
it was
theme.
unfair. You couldn't see the damn thing, but that's how that episode went in Bradyland. Greg was going to get his comeuppance in this episode. And ultimately, when people get their comeuppance, normally it's more than a broken egg that is paid as the price. Damaged ego.
Oh, that could last a while, though. Broken egg, hey, clean that up. Damaged ego, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, here we are, like 40 years later, still talking about it. So there you go.
Yeah. It's going to last. Things that last. Chris.
The chicken that could have been.
Chris S. Not you, Chris, but Chris S. sent us a photo of his new purchase on the Facebook page. It's called the Brady Bunch Party Game. And there wasn't a particular question that came to this, but it really raised one with me because there's a lot of this stuff that's out there. What are the games, the toys, the lunchboxes, tchotchkes that you guys find the most interesting or memorable? That's what I want to know.
I know what Barry's going to say.
Tiki.
Of course.
I've got one over here.
Oh.
Hanging. Yes, the tiki has got to be the most interesting, useful item out there. Look at this, a Greg bobblehead.
The audience can't see it, but you can see it online at his eBay store. And
no, not this. This one you can't get. This Groovy Greg.
This one's not the one?
No, Groovy Greg. The tiki that you can get Barry Williams Direct on eBay is a faithful replication of the one I wore in Hawaii. This is basically, it's supposed to be like a cup, and it stands about 10 inches high, and it's Groovy Greg in a bathing suit, the big smile, and then kind of a representation of the tiki. But I just thought that'd be fun if you haven't seen it.
You will have to actually take a photo of that, Barry, so that then we can post it on our Facebook site.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
And they're sold out, by the way, so I'm not selling anything here. Just kind of interesting. And in line
No, but it would look great on the page.
which kind of thing, bobbleheads. When I was a bobblehead, I felt, like I'd made it. I mean, that was just too good. Also, early while we were doing the series, they came out with the Viewmaster. Now, many of you may not know what the Viewmaster is, but it was a wheel of pictures, and then you put them in this
Viewmaster.
Yeah.
A 3D Viewmaster.
Yeah, and then you could advance it with clicking, and when you looked through it, it reflected light in the back, so you could see the picture, and it magnified it. And that was I still have that.
Well, more so, what it did, the whole Viewmaster was a camera for those on the photography side that had two lenses. So it created a 3D photograph that then was embedded in this wheel, right? So that when you put it in the viewfinder, which also you put up to both eyes, you saw a 3D kind of version of the photograph.
Was doing that the first time you fell in love with Jan? Little 3D? And your imagination?
I remember you trying to convince Maureen that, that you didn't need a viewfinder.
I didn't.
That she just needed to relent.
Okay. You remember that? Were you listening outside the dressing room door or something? Were you making that up?
Your set was, your dressing room was on the set, so we all heard your overtures.
Okay. All right.
Well, there are no secrets.
Your gamey ways.
There are no
Where
secrets.
are we going with this?
Well, I just want to know some other games and things that are out there that you guys got the most reaction on.
We had coffee cups, of course, the lunchbox, and if it has a thermos, that's valuable. I just signed one of those like a week ago. Also,
remember those old thermoses, those glass thermoses you drop and they'd break, but if you didn't drop them and they're still around today, they smell like old milk.
Old curdly milk. What else, Chris? What else are we thinking? We had hats, T-shirts, the usual.
There hasn't been that much. I'm trying to recall.
I'm trying to think of what we haven't been. What's the new one that dresses us up like characters, but you don't recognize
are there any action figures? The GI Chris or
the Pop dolls?
The Pop dolls. No action figures. What action were we taking? Greg with a guitar, or Peter choking on a chicken wing?
I like that.
The two of you giving a Heimlich maneuver in doll form. Something I need to say. No, I can't unsee it. I said it. Now it's stuck in my head. And I can't get rid of it.
Is that?
I don't even know what the part. I mean,
is that?
I have that party game, but I've never cracked it open to find out what
is that really
what the game is, or
Heimlich maneuver he's performing.
What kind of party you could have with it. So,
hey, well, all right.
There were books. Remember the books, the like crime books, like with Brady solving the.
And what about the dress? What about the dress up doll? The
dress up doll.
The dress up.
You had a dress up doll?
Well, I wasn't the only one. We all did. I mean, the Brady Bunch, and you could put different clothes on them, and
I seem to recall.
Vinyl,
yes,
whatever, not vinyl, but that plastic would stick shorts or a T-shirt or something on.
Yes.
See, I just remember going to school and kids had Brady lunchboxes. This is something I remember very clearly. And of course, I was in college at the time, but that's a whole different story. But back in the day, no, seriously, in like a grade school setting, those were everywhere. Those to me are the ones I remember.
Well, because people had lunch boxes back then. They don't.
Exactly.
I'm not sure if anybody manufactured a lunchbox today that'd actually be used to carry a lunch. Maybe they would, but so they're now just collector's items. But what year, Ed? We're not that far apart. I don't remember those lunch boxes. While actually, I was in grade school.
I was. Yeah, you and I are close to the same age, so I remember those in grade school. That
would have come when I was like 17, 18.
Well, Ed did grade school more times than you, Chris.
I think he wasn't lying when he said he carried that.
Best 8 years of my life
at UCLA.
That actually segues beautifully into this next question, guys. And I really want to get to this because I find this.
Are people still listening? Okay.
Oh, I think they're there. Oh, yeah. Last I checked, billions. Scott brings up the following. Regarding the reunion shows, did each actor have the ability to add input to where the character's development was during each reunion? And by 81, it seemed that Greg was a doctor, Peter was in the Army, and Scott also notes a hilarious observation.
It was the Air Force.
That when watching, was it the Air Force? When watching the 81 reunion and the 88 very Brady Christmas reunion, is that Cindy and Bobby are still in college. But then the first scene of the Brady girls get married, which is apparently many, many years later, Mike and Carol are entering the house after dropping Cindy off at college. So there's your 8-year plan. So
28 years old.
Seems like continuity was missing at the point. I just found that interesting because was there a continuity problem with timelines?
Yes, what continuity? Yes, there were. But during the filming of the Brady Bunch, yes, they would allow us to make comments or discuss certain vocabulary changes. Like you need to use an out of sight here instead of a groovy, or that kind of a deal, or small changes in dialogue, and so we could keep it into our own words. Keep it real. If we had gone to a 6th season, I'd had discussions with the producers about college and going on there, which seemed pretty natural. But when we came back for reunions after being away a long time, and I was introduced as a doctor, which was Very Brady Christmas, I believe, Chris? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you were Air Force. I didn't have any input on that. That came to me as a script already determined, and I guess okayed by, I think Lloyd had a large hand in the writing of the Brady's, and and it's gone through network approval and studio approval, and so that was it. I didn't question it.
So we're conflating, and that's very easy to do. First comes the Brady Brides in 81. Right. I wasn't military.
Well, we weren't in that. Or I wasn't.
I think we all did. We might not have done. I think I did.
Maybe part of the pilot,
a drop in.
I know, but I was never a part of the series that I recall.
Brady Brides, I was in the Air Force. I'm sorry. For the Brady Brides, I was in the Air Force. But A Very Brady Christmas, which comes 7 years later in 88, I'm in high tech. I'm implied some high tech.
And you were in high tech at that point by then.
And I was in high tech. It was sort of like built, but I didn't have anything to say about that. It was just sort of them building off of, using my own arc as a starting point. And no, they never really, they didn't come to us for our ideas on our characters, but they sort of folded in some of who we were into the
Just like they did the original show.
I mean, until they got to like Bobby being a race car driver who got in an accident and was, paralyzed or partially paralyzed. That, was totally fictitious. Matter of fact, what was my thing in... Oh, I was then in politics. I was working with Mike, who was running for office. I was his campaign manager.
Okay. But wait a minute.
Wasn't something I would have arced myself.
Is this Very Brady Christmas you're talking about?
Now I'm talking about the end, the Brady's.
Well, the Brady's, you were working 90. You were working for your fiancée, right? A little insecure.
Was Very Brady Christmas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was Very Brady Christmas, and Air Force in the Brady Bride.
Thank goodness we never changed the theme song.
That's how it's so confusing, because we've had these arcs, and we can sometimes I don't even remember which came first.
Chicken.
Now I'm looking at it to make sure that I've got it straight. But I
chicken or the Greg.
Research.
Right, there you go. Sorry.
Well, he already cracked the egg, so there is no chicken. It's just a Greg. Grounded egg. That's what Greg stands for.
We have any other questions? This one just popped in here from the fabulous Facebook page, Roman. And this is the last question for the day, thankfully. Is there a specific room in the HGTV Brady remodel house that absolutely nails the look of the original set, according to you guys?
The foyer. The foyer. Coming in the front.
Was there
a
room that didn't?
Coming in the room.
Coming in the front door, that whole entrance, the wall, the door itself, the hardware, the closet to the next side, the rocks on the wall that were decorative, those were actually traced from photos and then placed there exactly. I thought that was pretty remarkable.
They introduced us to the rooms we weren't there building them when they came around to the end. So then it became a reveal for us to see the room finished and fully furnished. And of course, the first room you see is the foyer and then the living room and the stairway. And it's expansive and impressive because we spent so much time there and it nailed it. Yeah. And just when you thought that there couldn't be another room that would nail it as much, you'd be introduced to the kitchen, which nailed it. Even with the same model refrigerator that they were able to have donated by somebody from Minnesota or Michigan. And then the family room. And then the boys' room.
And Mike's tent.
It was, and then Mike and Carol's bedroom. It was a sequence of a little dumbfoundness, happily, but that there, every room was so faithfully recreated that I couldn't come up with a room that would be the favorite or one that did it better than another.
It was clear that they put the full force of their network on getting this thing exact. I didn't even know it was possible that you could be this faithful to it. And they outsourced for it. They reached out to fans. That's how we got that refrigerator.
Right.
We had to reconstruct things. In fact, Chris did something that was remarkable. I wouldn't have even thought of. We struggled to find the horse that goes on that low counter in front of the staircase. And right. Chris, tell them what you came up with. And this is how we got the horse.
So my business ultimately in high tech revolved around 3D. Early in 3D becoming universal for everyone. Back in the day, 3D was sort of just owned by the special effects houses that were doing very expensive CGI in movies. And of course, they've continued to improve upon that, which you see everywhere. But there's other practical uses for 3D. And one of those leads to using now 3D printers to print something that's designed in 3D. And they found the horse. The horse was in the basement storage at Paramount, where a lot of props and set pieces are. But it hadn't really been cleaned out since an earthquake, I think probably 94. And they found it crushed. The legs, it's on an armature, right? It's a clay kind of
it has a base
piece, ultimately. And it has a base, but inside is metal, right? So the thing was laying over, and the ceramic components that, well, are not malleable, they don't bend well, were broken off. And so the legs were essentially not there anymore. They had splintered into many different pieces, some too small to even find. So we stood it back up on its armature and then had to replace the legs. And through photogrammetry, taking multiple photos of the unit as it was, and then resculpting in 3D software the legs and comparing those to photographs of the horse on the set, we're able to recreate in 3D the whole horse and then remove the components of the horse that we currently had and left behind those pieces that needed to be replaced. And then we printed those on a 3D.
Is that crazy? I mean, is that crazy?
And put it back together.
That's the kind of specificity. That's the kind of detail. That's the kind of effort and energy. Every one of us has a story that's similar in terms of, wait a minute, how are you going to do that? Even Mike's drafting table. I worked with one of the HG remodelers on Mike's den, and they found the exact model of the desk for that he drafted on, and then we found the material that coated that, and then had to cut it to exact specifications to make it look exactly the same. And it was really a remarkable experience. It was a joy to do that show, and it was terribly nostalgic for us, of course. But there was such a good vibe from everyone who was there. Wanted to be working on that show, and it was a lot of
fun. Loving recreation, lovingly recreated. It was a pleasure to be part of.
And the fans embraced it.
Very effective.
Still remains, I think, one of the top-rated HGTV shows of all time, as I recall.
As I understand,
yeah. It's really something. Guys, that's it for Q&A, and we're so thrilled. Well, we do more.
Well, let's
I
do
got a whole
next
bucket
week.
of questions right here. Shall we? Next week we'll do some more, and everyone's just very anxious to hear your answers, and I always love doing them.
Clearly, there are more questions than there are answers.
Apparently this week it seemed to go that way, didn't it? Yeah, that's right. Guys, thanks so much. It's The Real Brady Bros. You can catch us on your favorite podcast platform every week. And we're, of course, as I mentioned, always thrilled to do these Q&As on top of that. So we're on basically twice a week now. And guys, as you say, Brady on.
Brady on. Have a
Thank you,
sunshine
Ed.
day.
Goodbye, all.